The content in this podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only. Whilst we love unpacking psychological research and evidence-based insights to support well-being, this podcast is not a substitute for personal mental health care or therapy. Nothing we say should be taken as individualized advice. If anything you hear brings up concerns for you, we strongly encourage you to speak with your GP, psychologist, or another qualified health professional. You deserve support that's tailored to you. Welcome to This Might Help, where psychology research meets real life. We're your hosts. I'm Dr. Kira Hart.
And I'm Dr. Lauren Rossetti, and we're two Australian psychologists, and we are in your ears or maybe in your eyes today to talk through all things overwhelm.
Yes, very relatable for so many people.
And for both of us at the moment, as usual with our episode topics, we are talking about how we're all feeling really overwhelmed by everything at the moment, the demands of life, what's all of the things going on, managing all of the things, or maybe feeling like we're not managing all of the things, why we are so much more likely to be feeling overwhelmed at the moment or in recent years, what that looks like, and then we will also talk about what to do about
Strategies. Yes, what can help.
What we ourselves can be doing and our listeners to try and support us to feel less overwhelmed.
Yes.
Yeah. So we will be getting into that, but before we do, as usual, I want to hear your wellbeing wins and wobbles, Kira, because we've been away for a few weeks and we're back.
We've been on break. So I had a really lovely holiday. I got to Sri Lanka for 2 weeks and had the most beautiful time. So that was by far my wellbeing highlight, maybe the year.
Yeah, what about the year so far?
Year so far, yes, it was incredible. Off the back of that, maybe my wellbeing wobble is just the jet lag I had upon return to Melbourne. There's a bit of a time difference and I never get a good sleep on the plane. Yeah. So just have felt a bit exhausted this week and definitely hit the ground running with a quick turnaround back to work, straight into it.
Yeah, Kira, did you not listen to our own podcast where we said come back from holiday and put some buffer days in before you go back?
Yes.
Yeah, you forgot.
I didn't. I had limited leave.
Yeah,
so.
Fair enough. And that paying the cost of jet lag for a beautiful holiday is kind of worth it.
It definitely is.
Yeah. My wellbeing win is that recently in the last week, I feel like I've had lots of moments where I've been talking to people and either in like a work context or also just like socially with friends and family and have been giving advice or talking through a problem solving something with others. And you know when it just hits, like you're giving the advice or you're sharing something or you're helping and it feels really useful for the other person and you're explaining things and the words are coming out right and it's all of the stars are aligning. Yeah. I've had that a few times this week and that's been really good.
And I've experienced it before we jumped onto the pod tonight. You were giving me life advice and it was so good. So can confirm.
Yeah. And I wasn't even thinking about that one example, but that's even better. all of the advice that's just it's landing this week. So that's good. My wellbeing wobble is that the other morning I went to make a coffee and the milk was off.
Oh no.
Like it wasn't right. And for anyone that knows me, I am driven by caffeine. I am run by a coffee and I didn't have it was not good. And so I couldn't make my coffee. I don't like to drink my coffee without milk.
No.
We were in a bit of dire circumstances and this is my wellbeing wobble because this is very relatable to the overwhelm problem. This for me that week was like the straw that broke the camel's back. It was like lots of things going on and then my milk wasn't good and I couldn't have my coffee. And even though in some weeks I might be able to tolerate that. That would be okay. It was not one of them.
Not
It
this
was
week.
it was the one thing that overwhelmed me. So that is leading us in essentially to our topic today, which is overwhelm. Why everything feels like too much and so much. And I think a lot of us are relating to this at the moment where even at the end of the day, sometimes even at the beginning of the day, we feel like we've done a million things, but also somehow we've not gotten through anything and our brain feels full, and it's just, it's so common, but it's like there's a background noise going all of the time. Kind of like, I don't know, you've got the radio, you've got something on there, or there's something buzzing away and you can't turn it off and you don't know where it is, and it's just there all the
Constantly
time.
playing.
Yes. So I came across this reel on Instagram recently by a creator called Maya Mason, and it summed up so well what I think a lot of us are feeling and a lot of what's kind of going through our heads all the time. And so I sent it to you, Kira, straight away. I was like, yes,
this needs to be an episode,
because I was like, we've got to cover this ASAP on the pod. We need to get to this. And I wanted to say some of this reel out loud to you on the podcast.
A live reenactment.
Or a non-live, a recorded reenactment. But please go watch the reel. It's Maya Mason, because they do a very, very beautiful job of this reel, and I'm going to slightly butcher it, but for the purpose of us all being on the same page, she says, you need to go to work. You need to make more money. You need to be healthy. You need to go to the gym. You need to go to Pilates, even though it's so expensive. Have you run 10K yet? Have you joined a marathon? War. There's nothing you can do about it. Everything's a carcinogenic. Everything's bad for you. Everything will give you cancer. Microplastics. Someone's pregnant. Someone just bought a house. You need a new beauty product. You need this one. You need Botox here and here and here. You have chores to do, the kitchen, the floors, the laundry, more taxes, doctor's appointment, dentist appointment, back to work. You've got to get a side hustle. You have to have more money saved. And then they just scream at the end, which I think really sums it up.
So
nicely.
relatable.
But anyway, that was a big ramble of just all of the things. And that's a snippet. But I guess it's all of the things we all have going on in our brains all of the time. No wonder we may, or many of us may be feeling overwhelmed.
Exactly. We're being pulled in so many different directions. So let's discuss it. What is overwhelm? I really like the definition by Dr. Faye Begeti. I hope I pronounced that right. They're a neuroscientist and author. They described overwhelm as when demands exceed our capacity, which can either be short-term or chronic. Overwhelm involves juggling numerous demands that exceeds what we can reasonably handle. This could be related to work, personal responsibilities, or a combination of both. It is the feeling that no matter how much we try to manage, we simply can't keep up.
Yeah, I really liked that description of overwhelm, particularly that we're juggling all of these things, but it's above what we can reasonably handle.
It's above what we can cope.
Yeah, and it's different from just being stressed. So when we're stressed, it's normally in response to a demand. But then when we're overwhelmed, it's when that stress is kind of tipping over a threshold and we can lose our ability to kind of think clearly, make decisions, or regulate our emotions. So for example, when I was feeling overwhelmed, but then I find out the milk is bad, the ability for me to regulate and manage that as I typically would might be reduced because we're already at a point of overwhelm. It can also, I guess, on the other side, feel like being paralyzed at times. So much to do, so much to think about, so many things going on that you don't know where to start. It's like, I can't do anything.
And overwhelm is really common. I know you and I have both chatted about how it's something we're experiencing, but also amongst friends. So many of us have so many competing demands, or we're being pulled in all these different directions, and our ability to cope with these demands, the demands are almost exceeding our ability to cope. We've spoken about in other episodes how in modern life there's more and more demands these days.
Yeah.
And also more and more access to information that we're all consuming as well.
Yeah.
According to research, approximately 1 in 3 adults report feeling consistently overwhelmed despite their efforts to cope. So it's happening to a lot of us. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling overwhelmed, you're not alone.
And there's a bit happening in our brains when we're feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
There's, I guess, like biological reasons why it can feel quite intense. Our prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain that is responsible for that kind of decision-making, planning. It can be that more rational thought, regulating our emotions, kind of like controlling the ship a little bit. That can slow down when we're under this more excessive stress. But meanwhile, our amygdala, which is our brain's kind of threat detection system, or where kind of a lot of those emotional kind of reactions and things are coming from, that can become more active. So we're seeing like a decrease or a reduced working of the control center of our brain, and an increase in our emotional reaction system. And so it's like the alarm system is going off in the building, but the person that's actually meant to respond to that and knows what to do, they're just not there. Yeah. So we've got this, all of this going on in our brain, but the rational, logical thinking, planning, working through what to do about it is decreased.
Not present.
Yeah. And so that's why we can see those like heightened, quicker, bigger emotional responses and reactions that come, because our brain's ability to reason through that can be reduced in those times. We can also see that kind of brain fog or difficulty focusing or difficulty making like even those simple decisions. It might feel really hard even to just pick, you know, what you're having for dinner, to pick anything like really simple might feel way harder, or can definitely feel way harder when we're already overwhelmed.
Exactly. And when we feel overwhelmed, the stress response kicks in. So adrenaline and cortisol floods our body and we go into a state of maybe fight or flight. And this is designed for those short-term threats, running away from a tiger.
As we love to talk about.
But in our modern times, you know, that's not the stresses we're facing. It's a never-ending inbox. It's another project on your to-do list, or
all these unanswered messages and phone calls and people to get back to and talk to and friends to catch
bills
up
to
with.
pay.
All of the things. The list is so long. There is a concept that talks about this that we come back to in psychology lots. Which is the window of tolerance. This is by Dan Siegel. And talk me through, Kira. Talk me through the window of tolerance.
Dan Siegel's window of tolerance. So basically, our window is the optimal zone of arousal in which we can function effectively. Within this window, we can experience emotions without becoming overwhelmed or shutting down. If you think about when you're calm, relaxed, able to regulate your emotions and respond in a like kind, compassionate, calm way, that's when you're within your window, where we want to be.
And if we get a stressful thing that comes up within that window, we're able to manage it.
It.
Like when something comes up, and when I find the off milk in the fridge, or when I drop something on the floor, or when, you know, XYZ little thing happens, if I'm in that window of tolerance, I'm in the optimal zone of that window, then I can handle that. I've got it. I'm just like, let me clean it up and move on with my life.
You can tolerate the stressor and move on. When we're pushed outside of the windows though, above our window is the hyper arousal zone. So this is when we might experience anxiety, panic, irritability, racing thoughts, or overwhelm. There's also the hypo-arousal zone, which is below the window. So when we drop, this is that emotional numbness, withdrawal, dissociation, or shutting down. And what's important to note is that our window isn't fixed. So one person's window of tolerance might be really, really big, and they might be able to tolerate lots of stresses being thrown at them.
Yeah.
Someone else's window might be much smaller, and it might be they might be a lot more likely to switch out of that window of tolerance into the hyper arousal zone, for example, and feel overwhelmed or feel anxiety.
Yeah.
And our windows can fluctuate based on numerous different things, such as like sleep, our stress levels, life circumstances, and past experiences. So when we're well rested, well supported, and we're not trying to juggle 20 things at once, our windows are wider.
Yeah.
Whereas when we're exhausted, stressed, we've dealt with lots of past difficulties or traumas, our windows are narrower. So then even those small things like the off milk might push you out of the zone when you're trying to juggle 20 other things.
Yeah. And then we have talked a lot about those kind of foundations of our well-being or foundations of our mental health, which are things like our sleep, our exercise, eating well, being supported socially, like all of those foundational pillars. If those are all going well, then that window of tolerance is likely to be bigger.
Yes.
But then if we are having a hard time keeping on track of all of those foundations of our well-being, then that's when we'd also see that window of tolerance become smaller because our baseline reserve is impacted.
Yeah. There's some really nice visuals for the window of tolerance as well. So maybe we'll post one on our socials to help people visualize the window of tolerance and the hyper and hypo arousal zones above and below.
Yeah. We also need to think about why overwhelm is much more common now than ever.
Yeah.
One of those reasons is just the information overload that we are all in all of the time.
Yeah. And we harp on about every 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah, all the time. So we're living in just a time where there's lots of information. Yeah. Everyone is well aware of this, but we have just got a huge volume of stuff coming at us all of the time. And that can be, from our phones is probably the biggest source, but it's also when you're out and about and there's billboards and there's like the radio and there's just all of these things all of the time, advertising everywhere. Like in that reel I was trying to replicate earlier, you need to buy this thing and you need this beauty product and you need, you need to be working harder on this and blah, blah, blah. Yes. Like we're getting all of this information all the time. We're also getting so much news all of the time and we're in, a particularly tricky time at the moment where there's just so much going on globally, and every single day, every moment of every day, you're discovering new information and new, often really challenging, distressing information about something all the time. So there's just so much information coming at us every second. There was a 2024 market survey that was across just under 50 countries, and that found that almost 40% of people feel worn out by the amount of news available to them. I imagine that to be even greater now, given how much is going on. And there was also some other market research we came across, which was from some American data, but I think that we would have some pretty close comparisons here in Australia. And that showed that people are checking their phones 186 times a day in 2026. And that's almost once every 5 minutes we're awake, I think. Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me though.
Yeah. It's so much.
It's a lot.
And I made Kira before, open both of our phones and go to our screen time settings and look up, because you can see on your phone your pickups, like how many times you've picked up and looked at your phone in the day. Yeah. What was yours like?
I was well below average, which I was pretty proud of myself.
Yeah. Was that just today though?
But I do try to not go on, like I make a very conscious effort to not use my phone unless I have to.
Yeah.
But the average person or average American, 186 times a day, once every approximately 5 minutes of waking time.
Yeah. I think mine was about 100 today, which is a bad day.
Yeah.
Bad day for me, I think.
Still lower than the average.
Yeah, we can take that small win.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're constantly having access to places where we can get this information to us, like our phone. We can pick that up all the time. But I think even when we are conscious of, keeping our screen time low or reaching for our phone less, even when we're putting in all of the effort for that, we still do get so much information at us all the time. Like it's very hard to avoid, even if you're very consciously on the, reduced screen time, less social media kind of train. Yeah. It's still hard to avoid.
Yeah. Thinking about like work or even your social life, you can be given so much information just day to day.
Yeah. From everywhere. It's coming from everywhere. We are constantly connected, which we've just spoken about, but also we are switching a lot between tasks and roles. So, we do have that constant connectivity, but we also then find ourselves in situations where we're kind of in our brain managing, we're the partner, we're the friend, we're the employee at this job, where this, that, and the other. Yeah. We're all of these roles, and they all have different tasks and things that we're managing. And this connects to a psychological theory called the cognitive load theory by John Sweller. And this is about how our brains have a limited amount of cognitive resources. And when those are exceeded, our performance can drop and our stress can increase. So we talked about, I guess, something similar with our attention and focus when we did that episode, where our brain has a limited capacity for these things. Like it has a limited capacity for how much it can tolerate. And when we exceed those levels, kind of like when we're going outside of that window of tolerance, then our ability to cope with the challenging things can reduce, and then we can feel more stressed.
Exactly. And another thing that contributes to that cognitive load is that the tasks we're doing, we're often switching tasks completely. So for example, you might be working on your emails and then get a phone call and then be doing a work task and back to emails and then checking social media. Yeah. And each time we switch, that has a cognitive cost, which also relates to another reason why we might be feeling overwhelmed is those invisible labor and the mental load that we're carrying. Yeah. So beyond the obvious tasks of what we're doing, there's also a huge amount of invisible mental work involved, such as like planning, remembering, anticipating, tracking, coordinating things as well. Yeah. And this is sometimes referred to as like the mental load, which we know women typically, or the mental load typically falls disproportionately on women, which may partially explain why women report those higher levels of stress when they're dealing not only with the tasks, but also those invisible tasks, such as like planning and coordinating on top of it.
Yeah. And when you're spending your days managing, all of these different things, all of the jobs, all of the just baseline overwhelming stuff, but then you're also doing all of the forward planning and thinking, okay, we've got a wedding next weekend, we need a card, we need to get money out, we need to plan how we're going to get there, we've got dinner with friends in a week, or we've got dinner with this person, they're coming over on Wednesday night, so I need to clean the house and I need to make sure this thing, and then if you've got kids and then they've got this excursion at school and they need this uniform and this lunch packed, and they're going with that friend who has this other allergy and we need to cater for that, all of these things, like the list is endless. But I think that invisible mental load that typically a lot of women do involves a lot of the forward thinking, planning, anticipating, problem solving for these future things and mapping all of that out so that things go smoothly, that adds a lot to that overwhelm, because you're both managing the things in the moment that you have to do and all of those kind of daily stresses, whilst also trying to invisibly think and plan and problem solve everything that's coming up.
And to be honest, I feel as though the mental load of this podcast has been unfairly or disproportionately put onto you, Lauren, for the past few weeks, as you are by far leading the charge with planning, coordinating, doing all the organizations, especially for the socials. So thank you for that.
You've been having a rest. You've been away.
Yeah.
You know, the tides will change.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they better for your sake. We can't have you burning out.
Yes.
The Zarnik effect is another theory which might be exacerbating feelings of overwhelm.
Yes.
So this is named after the psychologist Bluma Zygarnik, and it describes how our brains are wired to remember unfinished tasks better than completed ones.
Yes.
So like having too many tabs open, each unfinished task kind of runs at the back of our brain, and you might be somewhere doing something else and you'll kind of think, oh, there's that thing I have to do in the back of my head.
Yes.
For example, for me, I know my car needs servicing and has needed servicing for a really long time. And it's always just sitting in the back of my brain, like on my to-do list, but never something that I'm actually actioning. But these uncompleted tasks, and the more we have, the more cognitive resources our brain is dedicated trying to keep track of all these things, which contributes to that constant feeling of being overwhelmed and having a million things on your to-do list.
Yeah. And I've seen them talked about in like more social media spaces, but as open loops. Like when you have these open loops, they're things that aren't closed or aren't complete, and they're kind of running in the background, exactly like you said. You might be, I don't know, you're doing something else and then suddenly you're thinking about, oh, there's this one thing that I haven't done, it's not completed, and I've been putting it off forever, and it'll just emerge in your brain always when you don't want it to, always when you're already stressed about something, and then you're like, there's that thing. I have so many of them, and they absolutely do contribute to this sense of overwhelm, because you're just always then thinking there's these things I have to do. And there's sometimes situations where we have open loops and they can't all be closed. We're never going to close all of the open loops. A lot of us work in jobs where there are always incomplete tasks. There are always incomplete projects or roles or things to do. And I mean, just in all of our daily lives, there's always, you know, washing or cleaning or cooking or something like that.
There's always more washing.
There's always more.
Yeah.
However, when there are lots of open loops of things that we come back to, like Kira, your car service, you know, that's like an open loop that we can close.
Yes.
Which we'll talk about when we get to the strategies. One last thing that is also making this overwhelm or feeling of overwhelm a lot more common these days is decision fatigue, which we've talked about before and lots of in recent episodes. But we just have, like where we have this huge amount of information coming in, we also have a huge amount of decisions to be making all of the time, and that can also add to that overwhelm. It's like if we're hitting decision fatigue, or if we're overwhelmed, we're going to hit decision fatigue more quickly too.
And the sheer number of choices we have actually depletes our cognitive reserves when we're trying to pick from so many things. So let's talk about why we might stay stuck in this cycle of overwhelm.
Yes. So one way to understand why overwhelm sticks around comes from these two doctors, Dr. Emily and Amelia Nagoski.
I think they're sisters.
Yes, I think they're twins.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're researchers. Well, I hope that's accurate.
They definitely are.
They're definitely researchers.
Whether they're twins or not,
I think
we should research.
We should, yes. But they have a book called Burnout: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. And this has a lot of kind of useful concepts around this cycle we can find ourselves in where we're feeling very overwhelmed and stressed often. One of those is that dealing with the stressor is not the same as dealing with the stress. So just because you may have solved the problem, like for example, you've sent the email or you've finished the deadline, it doesn't necessarily mean that the stress has kind of left your body or that your nervous system is feeling like that stress has gone.
Yeah.
So like you were talking about earlier as well, Kira, when we're, you know, we send emails, but there's other emails to send, or, you know, I know we were talking about, okay, you do one email
and then 10 more have come in during that time.
And so it can feel like, okay, well, the thing's never gone.
Yeah.
And it's like when we think about this fight or flight response, or like, you know, if we're thinking about that again with our tiger that we talk about, you know, if you had a tiger chasing you, you'd run away, you'd kind of escape that threat, hopefully, and then you would, you know, talk to your community, or you talk to the people, you'd share the story, you would have run away, and that kind of comes to a conclusion.
Yeah.
So you have this big threat that causes a stress response. You have that fight or flight, but you are fighting or you're flighting.
Yep. You're running away.
Yep. And then that ends, you may talk through it, it kind of concludes that stress cycle, and that physical response is resolved.
Yeah.
It, you know, comes to an end.
Yeah.
But in our modern lives, like we keep talking about, our stress isn't like that. It's not usually a one-off event. It's not something we can run away from. You know, it's the emails that never stop. It's the, you know, financial stresses that might be there in the background all of the time. It could be, you know, just tension with a friend or a family member or something that's happening in the background.
Yeah.
It can be these things that are always going on
And never fully finished.
never fully finished. And so we might think that we've dealt with it. Like we might, even if we think, okay, we've replied, we've kind of pushed through that work day, you know, or we've avoided or put off something as well.
Yeah.
Our body is not getting the signal that it needs to know that that threat is actually over. Like that, I guess there's not that clear end point to, for example, you know, we're not running, we're not fighting or flighting.
Yeah.
And so then our body's not getting that system, or our nervous system isn't getting that feeling that we've completed that stress cycle and it's come to an end. So the stress might just stay and then it can accumulate, rather than feeling, okay, I've responded to that stress or that threat and now I'm feeling safe and calm, and then my body physically can respond and calm down from that stress cycle. But a lot of us are ending up more so in a cycle of carrying a constant level of stress and a constant level of like these small little responses to threat and not coming to that conclusion.
Exactly. And when this stress lingers, it's how people end up carrying stress for years and years, because it's going incomplete. Like we can't pause emails entirely. There's always going to be emails coming in and out. And so overwhelm isn't always about what's happening right now, but it's often a build-up of previous stresses and things that have accumulated over time. It's not just the tasks you're currently juggling. It's everything you've kind of juggled before up to this moment.
Yeah. And that's why it's often something small or little or something that you could manage on another day.
Yes.
But when it happens in this moment, when you're at that capacity, when you've reached the edge of your window of tolerance, that it can be something small that tips you over.
Exactly. Like spilt milk.
Exactly. We need to talk about what we can do about it and some of the evidence-based strategies to help manage or think about managing overwhelm. And the first is directly related to what we just talked about, is dealing with this stress cycle. So the Nagoski sisters that wrote that book and kind of talk about how these incomplete stress responses can build up. They talk about 7 strategies that can help us to complete this stress cycle. Essentially, it's helping you to tell your body that that stress or that threat has passed and you're safe, and you're kind of working to give your body the signal that that stress cycle has is complete,
Yeah.
so that you can decrease the level of overwhelm.
Yeah, the cycle's closed.
Yeah.
The biggest strategy is physical activity.
Mm-hmm.
So our bodies are primed to move when we're stressed.
Yeah.
Think about the fight, flight response. So moving our body is the most direct way to complete the cycle. It doesn't have to be intense. It can be walking, running, doing star jumps, doing push-ups, just doing anything to get your blood pumping and your heart rate up.
Yeah.
If you think about the nature of stress, so often it's stored in our body and we want to physically shift it by physically moving our bodies.
Yeah. It's why some people might like to exercise at the end of a day or move after work to kind of break that cycle and put a completion to the end of a stressful work day by having something there that tells your body, okay, I've released this stress or this energy and I'm like putting a close on the day.
Yeah. And so many people do use physical exercise as a mental health strategy. So I really like this conceptualization of it as physical activity helps you complete the stress cycle. So you had a stressful day at work, but doing physical activity afterwards can close the stress loop, the stress circle.
Yeah, and letting your body know, okay, you've expended that energy now. That's kind of coming to an end. Now it's time for rest.
Yeah.
Deep breathing is another one. We also talk about lots, but, you know, taking those slow, deep breaths, again, they're like a signal back to your nervous system to go into a state of calm rest and like relaxation.
Yeah.
Positive social interactions are also one of the strategies. So even just, you know, something brief with a friend, having a chat, having a laugh. Again, it's just signaling that safety and kind of addressing that need for social connection.
Yep. Affection, such as giving someone a hug, can help like release those feel good, loving chemicals, hormones, which can improve mood. Other strategies include like having a good cry or laughter and creative expression. So art, music, writing, cooking, creative activities can create a space that tolerates and also like encourages those bigger emotions as well.
Yeah, this is really good reflection about how when we're feeling that build up towards overwhelm, a lot of us may be prone or more likely to hold in those emotions. So I think, you know, everyone can probably think of or relate to a time where they've been holding back the tears or they've been like, you know, they feel like that bottled up feeling where you can notice that it's building, or you notice that those emotions are kind of heightening, but you're holding it together. But sometimes when we hold it together, or we hold back the tears, or we keep it all in and we're trying to, you know, keep everything afloat, it just leads to that bigger build up and feeling, which is creeping us, you know, towards the edge of our window of tolerance.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's going to tip over.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like the one about having a good cry, because sometimes you can feel those tears coming and you need to just let them out.
Yes, you need the release.
Yes.
And that will complete the stress cycle.
Yes. We also talked earlier about our open loops and those open tabs. And one strategy is to help close some of those. So
tell me more.
Yes, those random things like we both talked about,
Getting the car service.
You know, we have those things coming up in our mind and they might play in the back of your mind and you're just thinking about and remembering that, yes, I've got this thing that I have to do that isn't done. And I find, I'm sure it's common for others, that the more overwhelmed I am, or, you know, the more that's going on, the more often my brain then comes back and thinks about those open loops and all of the things that are not ticked off the list. One way we can manage that is by brain dumping. So kind of getting everything out of your head and onto paper, onto something to just externalize those thoughts and that list of open loops. So what are all of the things that, you know, maybe you're avoiding, maybe you've left incomplete. I think I need to take a photo, like a passport photo or something. I feel like I've got some of those.
I feel like I need to do that too. I don't know what for, but for something.
It's like all of those things. Get them
Yeah.
all out of your brain and onto paper, onto somewhere where you know they are. But these are
Yeah.
like your open loop list. But then when we do that, it's thinking about what can you drop? Is there something on that open loop list that your brain keeps coming back to that you don't actually need to do? Maybe it's that, I've got to clean out that one cupboard in the house. Do we need to do that in the next few months? Maybe we don't. We can just drop that from the open loop list. Let's give our brains a break and just say, that is one thing I'm taking off the load. But then also, can you delegate something, or can you ask someone to do something? Is there someone else in your household that can take that loop? Is there someone else at work that can take that open loop of that task or that tab?
Yeah.
And can you offload that in some way? Then what can you solve now from the list? What can you book in? Is it a doctor's appointment? Is it the car service? Is it the going to the post office and getting a driver's license photo? What is it that we can just solve now? Is there one thing this weekend, this whatever night, this day that you can take off and close so that loop is shut?
Exactly.
Or if it's a bigger open loop that's going to take some time, can you even just take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a small bit of time to take a step towards closing that loop? Especially for those big things that we might be avoiding. I can think of a few key giant ones that I need to take some small steps to close.
And if you're feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount of loops you have to close, it can be helpful, rather than keeping like a never-ending list of 1,000 bullet points, just identifying 1 to 3 high priority tasks per day or per week that you can focus on, and just keeping it a short list and ticking those things off the to-do list, closing those loops.
Yeah. And we spoke about recently that question of, if there's only one thing I could get done today, what would it be? But that can be helpful as well when our brain is feeling so overwhelmed. Rather than starting every day thinking, okay, I have 7 million things I have to do. I have all of these things they've got to get done. What's the one thing, or what's the 3 things? But, if it's this small collection, only 1 to 3, they're the highest priorities. That's what I'm going to focus on today, rather than the overwhelm of, okay, I'm going to attempt to get through all 20 of these tasks. Too much for our brains to handle.
Widening our window of tolerance is also a great approach to dealing with overwhelm.
Yes.
So strategies that widen our windows are not surprising, because they're the fundamental basics of mental health that you spoke to earlier.
Yeah.
So making sure we're getting enough sleep. Sleep deprivation naturally decreases and shrinks your window. So prioritizing sleep is one of the most effective things you can do to increase your window's capacity.
Yeah.
Making sure you're getting enough movement and physical exercise, and making sure you're having that positive social support to regulate your nervous system, to be able to vent and debrief and get things off your chest. Also, like co-regulating with calm people around you can be really good for your nervous system as well.
Yeah.
And of course, practicing like mindfulness and being present in the moment can help expand that window of tolerance when, there's a million things being thrown your way and things are feeling heavy. Being mindful can help open that window.
Yeah. And when we're mindful, or when we're practicing mindfulness, we're also teaching our brain the skill of letting some of those thoughts go and focusing just on what's happening in the moment. So a lot of our overwhelm will be linked to that rumination and worrying and overthinking that we also talk lots about. But when we can help our brains become more likely just to focus on what's in the moment and managing, those current thoughts of what we're doing right now, then that can help decrease it. I'm also thinking about how with these foundations of our mental health and our well-being, there will often be times within our lives where maybe some of these we can't do as well as we would like. For example, you've got a very young kid, or you've got a household full of lots going on and you can't get good sleep for a period of time, or you find sleep really tricky, or having those calm people around you might be really challenging at different times. And that is going to happen to lots of us for lots of different reasons, and it's going to fluctuate. But we can think about what ones from there, what things within our foundation we could focus on in a small way. Maybe sleep's going to be really tricky for the next 3 months, or maybe it's always been tricky and we need to focus a bit more on movement. Maybe there's an opportunity for some small movement. Maybe there's an opportunity for 2 minutes of some deep breathing. And like, that's the pocket where we can help to very slightly expand that window.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be, okay, I've got to have good sleep and move every day and have good connection and do mindfulness meditation every day, and I have to do all of them, otherwise my window of tolerance won't get larger.
Yeah.
It's more that if you focus a bit on any of these things in any way, you might start to expand that window.
Yeah.
Which is what we would like.
Exactly.
Reducing the input from all of the sources around us is also a way to help with this.
So setting boundaries with information, like turning off non-essential notifications, limiting news consumption to specific times, curating your social media feeds.
Yeah.
Also, avoiding multitasking where possible. We know that when we try to do numerous things at once, it reduces the quality, but it also increases our stress hormones. Like people find it stressful to multitask. So try doing one thing at a time, even for short periods. And it can also be helpful to build in transition periods between tasks. So rather than jumping straight from one task to the next, create that small buffer. So for example, we finish work, we're coming home and cooking dinner and catching up with family, but maybe a nice buffer in between is going to that Pilates class to get decompress at the end of the workday. Or maybe it's a 5-minute walk in between work meetings when they're really busy, focused meetings, and you just need a moment to transition between. Having a few deep breaths before you start a task can also be a quick little transition.
Yes, absolutely. At the moment as well, there's just so much information all the time. And like we talked about earlier, it's hard to avoid that, even when we're really consciously reducing our time on social media. But it can be nice to just mark out or block out those pockets of times when you're able to be disconnected from tech especially, but also it can be from just people and other things. So it might be, a quiet time in a park where you're sitting and reading a book for an hour, or it might be a moment sitting down, even 5 minutes, having a cup of tea just in silence with, nothing going on, no music, no podcast, no whatever, just like those pockets of time doing nothing where you're not taking in all of this stimuli from everything around you to help your brain get used to a bit of that rest as well.
Exactly. And a final strategy to support with overwhelm is to check in with yourself regularly. So building personal awareness takes time, and we all have a different window of tolerance. Our window of tolerance will fluctuate over time as well, but building that self-awareness can help establish your personal threshold about when you might exceed your window of tolerance and go into a period of overwhelm. So most of us don't actually know when we're building up or reaching the point of overwhelm until it's too late, or until we're on the very, very edge and we can see ourselves tipping. But a quick little check-in you might do is just ask yourself, like, how full is my cup right now? Or like, am I inside my window of tolerance? Is my window of tolerance like big today? Am I on the verge of going into hypoarousal, for example? and just like check in with yourself.
We need to notice some of those cues to help us put in the strategies to keep us within the window.
Yeah.
So like you said, what can often happen is that we're building all the time until we reach this point of tipping over the edge, and then we're just very overwhelmed, very overstimulated, feeling all of the things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like suddenly we've just reached there and we've not noticed along the way. And there is, I guess there's two things with this. One part is that we want to over time build our ability to identify those cues.
Yeah.
So what do we feel in our body when we're reaching the point of tipping over? Is there a typical feeling we have? Do we notice irritability? Do we notice, like, what do we notice in our body and maybe in our minds that means that we're getting there? I'll notice that I'm kind of picking up like clutter in the house more. I'm noticing I have like less tolerance for a cup on the sink or things on the dining table, something like that.
Yeah.
But that can be hard for us, or it can take time to build that awareness of like, what are your body cues? What are your mind cues? What are the things that tell you you're reaching your level of overwhelm? The other part of it is scheduling or putting in things that help to keep you within your window of tolerance, which is, looking after those foundations of health.
Yeah.
But it can also be things like regular check-ins with a friend, or it can be, the 5-minute walk around the park. But doing those things regularly throughout your day and throughout your week, even when you don't feel at the point of overwhelm, will help to keep you within that window, rather than not doing them and then suddenly you're at the point of overwhelm, and then it's a lot harder to kind of bring ourselves back down. So scheduling those things in as just like a standard practice can help keep you there whilst you build up that awareness of those body signals too.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. We hope we haven't overwhelmed you with information. We're mindful it is a lengthy episode, but a really important one, given so many of us are experiencing feelings of overwhelm, and it is so common. So we hope you enjoyed the episode. We are on socials at This Might Help Podcast.
Yes.
On Instagram, TikTok, and on YouTube.
Yeah, you can watch the full video version there if you like. We also have all of the references and resources in the show notes as usual, and there are also helplines and other links to resources if you need them for any extra support. As usual, they're all there.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
This podcast was recorded on Wurundjeri land. We acknowledge and pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of this country. We honour their knowledge and resilience and the ongoing impacts of colonisation on well-being.